you for coming to mine and Josh's talk on architecting Drupal commerce sites. This is a sort of a presentation of some of the highlights from our training that we did yesterday on using Drupal Commerce and Commerce Kickstart to launch e-commerce websites using Drupal. Maybe some different content, probably mostly covered yesterday as well. So if you were in the training, feel free to find something you would enjoy more. Go ahead, let's introduce ourselves. I am Ryan Zarama from Commerce Guys. I'm one of the founders of our company and have been with the company since 2009. When we were still building UberCart websites, I was the former maintainer of the UberCart modules on Drupal 5 and Drupal 6. And then in 2010, whenever Drupal 7 was kind of settling down a little bit, we started to re-implement much of the functionality that we had in UberCart on Drupal 7, and thus the Drupal Commerce project was born. So Commerce Guys is now about 60 folks between 3 different offices in London, Paris, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. Except for myself and Josh and a few others, we work from home in Greenville, South Carolina, just up the road, which is why we were happy to drive down and take part in Drupal Camp Atlanta. I'll let Josh introduce himself.
I'm Josh Miller. I've been working at Commerce Guys for a little over a year. My job is to work with the community, so hello community. My job is to interact with you. I do recognize some of your faces from training, from maybe Drupal Camp Atlanta, well, not Atlanta, that's where we're at, Drupal Camp Florida, maybe Austin. So it's good to see some recurring faces. Anyway, if you need more information after this, if you're interested more, we'd love to talk to you more, so come up here. I can kind of help you get connected, maybe set up your account on drupalcommerce.org so you don't get spam filters, stuff like that. We can hook you up. And one more shout out, somebody is doing a, Mr. Connerton, I don't know his real name, I just know his username. Matt is doing a product bundling BOF at 1 p.m., so you might go to that. We're going to try to as well. So I think I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan, and we're going to get started.
Alrighty, so the session topic is architecting Drupal commerce sites. But in order to introduce the session, we're just going to present the big idea, which is kind of my vision statement for Drupal commerce since DrupalCon Chicago. The big idea is that we are building, on top of Drupal 7 and future versions, hopefully, the #1 open source e-commerce platform in the world. I don't think we're there yet, but that's the vision, that's where we're headed. And kind of our key angle, because we're built on Drupal, is that what we've done is built a system that actually powers truly flexible e-commerce. There's little that I can't model for you using Drupal and Drupal Commerce because of things you may be familiar with, like the entity system and field system, views, rules, and other modules like that make it really simple to build. Okay, they make it simpler to build complex websites, applications, e-commerce sites. If you know the secret code words and handshakes and other things besides. But hey, that's why we have Drupal camps, to learn how to use views and rules, and then, of course, Drupal Commerce. And what we want you to take away from this session, as we go through a sort of list of different things you may have to architect before beginning to build your Drupal Commerce site, is what are the pieces, the entities and fields that we defined for you in Drupal Commerce to do some of these things with the software. Because of course, whenever you are starting a new software project, it helps to understand the data types available to you, the data model behind them, how these things were sort of intended to fit together, and then also at what point can you customize or change the way all these different things are working together. So Drupal Commerce itself, just the core project, really exists to define the base systems components that you need to do e-commerce on a Drupal site, which means that we add to your node, user, taxonomy term, entity types, the concept of product, line item, order, customer profile, and payment transaction. Then also out of the box in Drupal, you may have a term reference field, list fields, number fields, and those sorts of things to enrich your content types and user profiles. We also add price fields, product reference fields, line item reference fields, and customer profile reference fields. And then we'll actually have less fields, and one more entity type in the next version of Drupal Commerce, but still maintain that flexibility. So let's talk about how we would use those different fields and entities and systems to implement simple product sales, products with attributes, customizable products, variable price products, and then I guess I'll talk about actual invoicing using product line items that represent maybe services rendered, but there is no shopping cart. And then we'll talk briefly about subscription products and recurring payments. So I'm gonna take the first one and then hand it off to Josh after that. We're talking about simple product sales. So the very simplest scenario is I have a T-shirt, an event ticket, maybe even not a T-shirt. I have a mug, we'll say, that I want to sell. That has no attributes. It's just a product page with a picture and an add to cart button, and I want you to come buy it from me. The first thing you have to understand in Drupal Commerce is that we have separated out the definition of a product from how that product is going to be displayed to your customer. So imagine, if you can, a physical retail store where you are filling your warehouse with all of your inventory, and then you have a unique SKU for every different product in your accounting system or ERP system. That sort of defines what products do I have, how many, what can I actually sell to my customers. But then how you put them on a shelf is going to differ from season to season. What you put them next to, what's on sale, what it's bundled with, all that stuff is a detail that is sort of divorced from the definition of the product and the SKU itself. So in Drupal Commerce, the product entity is the definition of the product, which is more or less a SKU with a price, and we do supply a title field as well. So this is the very basic product data model is a new entity type where every product has a SKU. It'll have a product ID as well, because everything in Drupal has a numeric ID that's sort of internal. But the SKU is that merchant-defined identifier of the product. The title is just what it's going to look like in the shopping cart, basically. And then your price is going to be, I guess, any currency. Obviously, most of us are doing stores in dollars, but you can have multiple currencies. You can add additional price fields if you need and the like. But this is the basic data that you can then enrich however you need with images, with attribute fields that Josh will talk about. Maybe just with project specs or product specs that you want to show on the product page or whatever. So you have the product entity, and in order to get this to, well, we'll skip past this guy since I already talked about all that. All right. In order to get it to display on the front end, the main paradigm is to add a product reference field to a content type. So whenever you install Drupal 7 standard, you end up with two content types, article and page. You may consider then adding a new content type called product display or product page or something. Then you add a product reference field to it, and you can render that product reference field to look like an add to cart form when somebody actually views this page. But on the edit form, in the core of Drupal Commerce, we have like select list and checkboxes widgets for that product reference field, but that's not really helpful if you have more than 5 products. So we also provide an autocomplete text field where you can type in the SKU or the title, and then select the SKU here. And you can have a single product reference or multiple, but for my basic simple product sale, I'm just going to assume that one page references one product, and whenever I render this page for my users to see, it ends up taking that, okay, that's not the most helpful screenshot, I'll have to fix that, but it ends up adding that cart button about right here, where you would be able to add the product to your cart. And what's great about the way the product reference field works is that we developed a system called product field injection, which just is a fancy way of saying that we take fields from the product entity, like images, like price and SKU if need be, and we can actually render those into the node, into the piece of content here that references that product. So even though we're viewing a node, that would typically only show the fields on the node itself, we can render into this display mode product fields too. And so that lets us do things like update images and pricing and whatnot as you're selecting attributes and sort of flipping around through the form. So this is the main paradigm for displaying products with Drupal Commerce. You have your product entity where you define the product with the SKU and price. Then you have a content type with a product reference field that renders as an add to cart form for the customer, and then may or may not, it's up to you, pull fields from the product entity and show them in the context of the display of the node itself. And that will work for any referencing entity. So if you, for some reason, had a product field attached to users or taxonomy terms or any other type of entity in Drupal, it can put these product fields into that view mode. So you do have the ability to customize what display formatters are used. So in this case, we had 3 different product images on the product type, or on this particular product. And using the Cloud Zoom display formatter for this field, we were able to render it as a product gallery that you can actually zoom in on and all that. So hand in the back.
So can you explain each color and then the size? Are those all separate SKUs and separate?
They are, but I don't want to get ahead of myself because Josh is going to cover that in a sec. Yeah, so they are. Let's see. Let's flip ahead so I don't end up jumping ahead of my own self too. So once you have this set up, you'll probably use this in like 95% of the Drupal commerce sites that you're building. If you use a distribution or an installation profile like Commerce Kickstart 1 or 2, we're creating these product types and node types for you, so you can kind of, again, kickstart the development process, but it's pretty trivial to make your own as well. You just kind of have to, make sure you position the fields accordingly, use proper display formatters, widgets, and all that stuff. Pretty customizable. But you will find instances where you just don't need this this paradigm at all. You can just use views and panels to display the products directly. See, product entities themselves don't have like a URL where you can go and view the product. And we did that intentionally because we were trying to sidestep some of the issues we encountered previously in UberCart with respect to stock control, the sort of lack of database level understanding of all the SKUs in the system, made reporting difficult, multilingual difficult, all that stuff. So when you define your products as entities, they don't have their own display mode, which is why we typically use nodes. But you can use something like views or panels to display the entity data directly. And in views, we have an add to cart form views field. So if you just have really a simple product site, you don't need standalone product pages, or maybe you do and you just want to use views to build them, you can. I have an example here of Zondervan.com, which is a Christian book publisher subsidiary of HarperCollins, maybe. They actually use, or we use for them, panels to pull the product entity from the database using the ISBN, which for some reason is the ISBN in the URL instead of the title, I don't know. But we use this to pull the product entity and then use panels to sort of place the different product field data around the page. And then the Buy Now button is actually an affiliate referral link out to Amazon.com or ChristianBook.com or other websites. So all this to say that you don't necessarily need to use the product display paradigm to do simple product sales. If you have an even simpler website where you don't need the node, you don't need comments, you don't need search or whatever, driven by the node system, you could just build your own catalog using views or panels.
And Ryan, then you could use Path Auto for the users to get to that page?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would use Path Auto, make some search engine friendly URLs or whatnot. If you aren't using nodes, I'm not entirely sure how you would go about having the pretty URLs, but I'm sure that there's a solution either in that project or another. But I'm gonna hand the mic off to Josh to actually address the question about product attributes. So was I supposed to?
You're supposed to talk about Uber.
Okay, I'll talk about why we got to where we are now, based on my experience developing and maintaining UberCart for a few years. We had 2 important lessons, and then the first is just that product attributes are different from product customizations. In UberCart, I define attributes as either things that you selected about the product, like the size or the color of a T-shirt, or things that were just free-form data entry, like uploading an image file to use to print out my business cards or something. And in effect, what you have is that UberCart really just treated everything as a customization, and if you wanted to have unique SKUs for different attributes, you had just a giant form where you could go in and type in the SKU alteration, and then if you ever added a new option or something, then all of your SKUs would blow away, and you'd have to go re-enter them, and so on and so forth. It was really a simple first pass. But what we determined was that we were really trying to do two different things with the one system. Really, we should separate out attributes, which are kind of merchant-defined properties of our product that you as the customer would use to select a specific SKU. So for example, if I know I'm selling these t-shirts in small, medium, large, and extra large, and that they map in my accounting system or ERP system to this SKU, that SKU, this SKU, then I can model that in Drupal Commerce and let you select your size and have it map whenever you click Add to Cart to that particular product SKU in the backend. Customizations are just customer-supplied information that you need as the merchant to fulfill the product, but they aren't necessarily going to change what base product you're picking out of the warehouse. Maybe it's etching an iPod or putting your name on the back of a sports jersey or something like that. The base product, the base SKU is still the same as far as an inventory control and accounting is concerned. But then you would maybe store some additional information with the order to know how to fulfill it as a merchant. So these are two different things. Josh is actually going to talk about both. Finally, the other major lesson was just that you really need that database level record of every SKU on the site. As I mentioned with UberCart, we supported unique SKUs for different attributes, but it was brittle, and there wasn't a way to actually query the database and say, well, what are my SKUs on the site? And so then how do you go about synchronizing these between external systems? How do you go about building reports or doing analysis on newsletter traffic to see if you actually sold a particular product? You know, it really made a lot of tasks difficult, and it didn't correspond to what businesses were already using to manage their inventory and their fulfillment. So we wanted the Drupal Commerce data model to match much closer to the sort of existing understanding in the business world. So those were our two important lessons, and with those in mind, we developed the system that Josh will now run through for us.
Okay, that was the why. This is the how. We have products in Drupal Commerce, and those are entities. And if you've heard that word before, then you're a hardcore Drupal developer. If you haven't, you're probably somebody who is just using Drupal as a content management system, and you're maybe interested in selling things, but you don't really want to think about the word entities because it sounds scary. But products are entities, and then we have things called product displays. And those are also entities, but those are nodes or content. So I like to describe this to people like we have buyable things, and then we have viewable things. And viewable things are the kind, it's a shelf if you're looking at an actual physical store, right? You have products, and then you have products that are on the shelf. And how you want to display them, perhaps you want to display over here of your best-selling blue t-shirt, and over here you want all of your t-shirts to show up based on size. So there's different ways you might want to view your products, and there's different ways that you might want to actually organize your products on the back end. So we make that distinction very clear. Now, that being said, we have products, and then we attach them to nodes. That's it. It's just a reference field. So you create a node, and then you attach products to it. So how do you achieve this on your store? How would you actually go about doing this? If you had a vanilla Drupal Commerce installation, you would add a list field or a taxonomy reference to your product type. And I have a feeling some of you might be hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and load a quick website here, because I'm like looking at you all and you're like, yeah, product types and stuff like that. So really quick, because I know we're short on time. This is, okay, you were going to say something, I'm sure. So we're waiting for the admin menu to load. I don't know if you all have experienced the lag time on that. That's always fun. But this is just a Kickstart 1 site. I could load a Kickstart 2 site, and we could wait a little bit longer for it to load. So while we're doing that, I'm going to keep talking about the checklist we have here. So once you've added the product type, and once you add fields to the product type, once you add fields to your product. So if we're selling this shirt that I have on right here, we might give it a size, we might give it a color. If we were selling some sort of blanket, you might give it a size, you might give it a color. But if you were selling a car, you would have a make and a model. Once you have these in your database, or perhaps you're bringing them in through feeds or migrate, from Excel spreadsheet, that kind of thing. You want to add one field to a node, and it's called a product reference field. In Drupal 8, it'll be an entity reference field, which means you can reference anything from customer profile field to product fields. But for Drupal 7, it's very simple. There's one field, Ryan wrote it, it's called the product reference field. And the third step really is to simply sell things. So let's see if Drupal Commerce is loaded. It has. Okay. So to demonstrate this, we have the store menu right here, and you would go into your product types, and you could just simply click on Manage Fields. And if you wanted to add color listing to your product types, you would simply add a list text field. If you wanted to get really fancy, you could add a taxonomy term reference field, which would allow the administrator, and this is my recommended approach, is to use taxonomy because you get lots of things for that. In Kickstart 2, you'll see the color selector that we were showing you earlier. That's a taxonomy field with a color field attached to it, and we're rendering those taxonomy terms. So you click on the color. So if you want to offer your clients the ability to have like a select list when someone's adding something to the cart that shows you a swatch of texture and color, that's easy because it's a taxonomy term with a field, with image field or whatever you want it to be, maybe an animated GIF. So you add the list text field, you give it a name like color and so forth, and then once you've added that, you would want to go back and to your content types like a product display, but let's just pretend it's an article because we don't have any fields there. And you go into the field management system of your node and you actually add a product reference field, which is the one that Ryan was talking about earlier, and all of the various fields that we have. So that's the product reference. And that's just to bring it back home to you guys to kind of see this is very easy. You're just adding fields to various entities. Okay, next step. That's just products with attributes.
So talk about like how that field works, the necessity of multiple SKUs per display, like how.
Sure.
Because that was the question in the back.
Okay, so the question was, why do we need SKUs? Why can't we just have a node that has multiple checkboxes? Ryan kind of touched on that when he was talking about UberCart. But the trick is, we need a specific ID that is actually connected to the specific product that's sitting on your back shelf somewhere. Even if it's a file that you're offering or a role that you're offering, there's something very unique about these things. And yes, there are stores out there with millions of products because they offer a product that has 3 different types of categories, and each category might have 50 different variations. So one unique product has 3 different taxonomy terms. For example, it's blue, it's large, and it's male. It's a shoe. So you can play that game all day long. Like, how do you create products? Well, you go down to the smallest way of organizing it, and you go up from there. So that's the SKUs that we're talking about, and that's why those are important.
You had a question while you're doing that. I'm going to actually add an attribute field here so they can see.
Okay. So Ryan's going to actually do this. You can hit it.
And then take the question, yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, the product reference field. I don't know that I saw that in the base installation of Drupal Commerce.
Okay.
Is that without Kickstarter?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is Kickstart 1. This is a good question. It's good information for everybody. Kickstart 1 is just commerce with views. That's it. So if you're going to...
And the product reference field is in there.
And the product reference field is part of Commerce Core. So really, Kickstart 1 should be called like Kickstart Minimal or something like that. Because really, there's nothing in it. If you're going to sell something on your store, you have to do the base install commerce, views, rules. That's it. That's all you need. That's what Kickstart 1 is doing. To further answer your question, though, where's the field? Yes, it's in Commerce Core. And it's right there. So we have a couple of fields that you can add to a node that makes things easier. Some of you might be used to adding image fields. This is a good example of that. And you can set an unlimited amount of image fields to your node, and then you could maybe use a display formatter to do like a gallery click-through or a carousel, that kind of thing. Just think of it that way. We're just adding products to nodes. And then instead of a gallery carousel that we're showing with all of the products you've added, we've got a great add to cart form that will take all the different attributes and create a selectable list so that you can say, I want blue, and it loads a blue product. I want large, and it loads a large blue product. Yeah?
Is that why you have that attribute check mark when you add a field?
Yes.
So that's telling Commerce Core that
this is something that
you're going to need to be able to render that particular field on a display table or on a shopping cart.
Right. So when Ryan was making this, he checked this field on the product entity to say that that field is an attribute. And these attributes are the thing we're going to use to select the price to show. If you notice, that changed to 20 when you select a size. And this is all automatic. This is all coming out of Drupal Commerce. You don't have to install anything else to make that happen. That's just the way the add to cart form works. And this is really the core of how Commerce is working too, because we want things that make your product different. And then we want to be able to track those things. So this is hard to do with one hand when you zoom in.
Ryan, you added those as style.
I did.
Yeah, it's easier to demonstrate that way. You could do that. You can do that.
But
Absolutely.
I heard you say earlier that you recommend
Highly recommend taxonomy.
It depends on if your merchant needs to define new options or something. I used a list text field here to add the small, medium, and large sizes to my product type. And I did that because I know how to use the field UI. And the primary advantage of using taxonomy term reference field is that it's easier for a merchant to find and add taxonomy terms than it is for them to come edit this field settings form. But if you're the one maintaining it, or if you know that they don't have to add new attribute options on the fly, well, it doesn't really matter, I guess. And then you don't have to deal with taxonomy term pages that you don't really need on the front end and that kind of stuff. So, we had a question in the back?
So maybe you'll discuss this later, but when you set up the taxonomy, let's say the size, it's small, medium, large, extra large, but this product doesn't come in small, but all the other ones do. How is that handled, or when you run out of inventory,
Yeah.
you want to sell it?
Yeah, so the question was, what do you do if this particular product doesn't need all of the attributes, or if, all the attribute options, or if one of them goes out of stock and it's not available? And the answer is that in my product reference field, I'm only referencing the SKUs that I actually want to be represented on the add to cart form. And so, for example, if I know this one does not have a large option, then I don't create a SKU for it. And the form is smart enough to only pick the available options that are represented by products on the reference field. Furthermore, whenever we do the whole Ajax refresh here of the add to cart form, as attribute options are selected, it will reload the product, and you can at that point with the Commerce stock module do the stock check, and it will change the add to cart button to out of stock or product not available button if that's the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions about product attributes, the data model there? Yeah.
Jump just a little bit ahead, but say you're getting to checking out just prior to checking out, and you're wanting 2 red shirts, 3 green, 5 yellow. How is that going to happen? Because you only have the one quantity field, so I want 5, but I want some number of this color.
Yeah, the question was, what if I want to check out and buy like 6 small, 7 medium, and 5 large? And the answer is that out of the core in Drupal Commerce, you would have to submit that add to cart form 3 times. So you'd have to change it to the color you want, and then you actually can expose a quantity field on the add to cart form. It's called a part of the settings for that display formatter. And so you just have to go through it 3 times. There is a module called Commerce Add to Cart Extras that currently provides a new display formatter for the product reference field that instead of that simple add to cart form gives you a table of all of the SKUs that you've referenced, and it will actually let you say, I want 6 small, 7 large, and whatever else, and then one add to cart button to add them all to the cart at once. So that's super handy on a site where you know that kind of ordering may be the standard. So. Any other questions about attributes? Or?
Ryan, did you say the product reference field is available in which module?
It's a core module inside of Drupal Commerce. So if you go to drupal.org/project/commerce, it's one project page on drupal.org, but it's actually comprised of about 20 different sub-modules, one of them being the module that defines this field, and among other things.
And it is not a part of Kickstart.
No, it is, because Kickstart 1 includes Drupal Commerce and all of its modules. Yeah. Over here.
Quickly, you said the stock module tracks inventory, does inventory?
Yes. Yeah, commerce_stock. And it does it, on a product entity basis, which is part of why we wanted to have that unique record of every SKU in the database. So as you change the options on the form, it will refresh, recheck that stock.
So
And
if you're out of mediums, t-shirts,
exactly.
medium doesn't show up as an option.
Say
I think it would still show as an option, but it would change the button from add to cart to out of stock. Yeah. Front?
Is Kickstart 1 actively maintained? In other words, do you
Yeah,
keep
I do that.
versions of?
Yeah. Right here.
How would it deal with things like quantity breaks on a customer-specific level?
Quantity rates on a customer.
For example, I'm a long-standing customer and I'm buying 6,000 of these widgets.
Oh, quantity breaks, yeah. It's not specifically related to
There's
product
a module.
attributes, really, but there's a module. It's like quantity discount, quantity range, something. One of our guys made a module that handles that, basically. And it'll handle it, again, at a SKU basis, so it will work on a form whether you're using attributes or not. Any fun questions about attributes before we move on to customizable products? All right, the only final thing that I'll add is that we do have modules that make it simpler to define groups of products, because as a merchant, it's a little bit tedious to go define my 9 SKUs in the back end because I have small, medium, large, and red, green, and blue, and then go create a display on the front end that references all 9 of those. There's the inline entity form module that can actually give you embed the product form in the node form, so you can create both at the same time. Then there's also the bulk product creation module, which can create your whole group of product entities all at once, and then create the product display that references them. And then on the roadmap for Drupal Commerce 2 is actually simplifying this particular user interface.
Okay, we're going to keep going. There's quite a few things we're going to get through here. On the idea of SKUs, you might say, I'm offering t-shirts of color and size, but I also want to, say, allow them to screen print a name on their shirt or modify something that's extremely unique. A great example of this is Apple. When they're selling an iPod or an iPhone, they might let you engrave your name on the back of it. And this screenshot, which, thank you, Ryan, for the Josh rules.
You bet.
Very nice. On this is actually a functional store that Ryan has running on his laptop, but he got kind of a takedown notice a couple years ago.
That was for Etsy.
Oh, that was for Etsy. Okay, well, from Apple, you would think, but this is an actual working example of the custom line item field. Now, you would think that would be extremely difficult to do, but it's not. It's very simple because what we have are products, and there's a couple of entities in the system beyond products. We also have customer profiles. We have orders. Orders are essentially a cart, if you want to think of it that way, and all orders have are things called line items. And a line item can be anything. It could be a product that somebody added to their cart, or it could be shipping that they've added when they were checking out, or it could be a discount that you've added, or it could be something that you've made up for your store because you needed to add a fee to the cart because they're using a particular payment gateway. There's all kinds of line items that you can add to orders, and really orders, all they're trying to do is be unique to your customer and track what they're actually asking to buy from you. So what we're adding to these line items are fields. That's a very complicated description of what's happening here. Basically, when you add something to a cart, you can add a field before they add it to the cart. So if you wanted them to upload an image for you to screen print on that t-shirt, or to change 2 different lines of engraving, you can simply do that by adding a field to your line item type. And then when you check out, you can show them those fields I think for a recent example was when we did the Cartier website for Commerce Guys helped an agency build the Cartier website. And if you're not in Europe, you may not know who they are. They sell lots of jewelry. I think there's rings and watches on their website that cost more than the website itself did. So just sell one of those guys and come back. But they have a thank you card that you can type in when you're checking out. Easily done with a customizable field. And to get there, to do that, we can simply go into the entity line item type here. Now there is a module called customizable product or customizable products, which is confusing because they're line items, but it's not confusing. It's exactly what you want to do with your products. It's named the way you guys are thinking, not the way the architects are thinking. So what you have here is a line item type with fields. If we go here, you'll see that there's a list of them, just like content types, just like product types. There's a list of these types, and that means we can add specific fields to different kinds of types. So if you're taking a donation, or if you have one type of product that has an engravable field, you can do a specific type for that and offer a specific set of fields for that action. If we go to Manage Fields and add a text field, and I'm just going to call it text, or perhaps you're going to get fancy and ask people to enter a coupon code before they click Add to Cart. You could use any of these fields. I recommend text, something that's pretty simple to work with, just as your first example. And it's got one of those checkboxes that is kind of infamous in Drupal and in Commerce, where you have to check it, or the thing you expect to happen isn't going to happen. So check that box on Add to Cart form settings. That tells Commerce that this is a field on the line item that you definitely want customers to be able to interact with. We're going to click Save, and then we're going to just go view our product, and we have a field right here called coupon. And if I were to click Add to Cart, that data would be saved to the line item of my cart. And you can do all kinds of stuff like that. You can change prices based on that, so you could look to see if it's a coupon code. You could add price to that if perhaps it's more expensive to do this. I've got a great video on YouTube. If you search for Pizza Store Drupal, it's a 20-minute video, and I show you how to create a pizza store with different toppings. So you can set up taxonomy terms like sausage and pepperoni and banana peppers, and they all have their own price fields. So when your customer's ordering a pizza, you simply choose banana peppers and pepperoni, and you can double up on those. And then when you add it to the cart, it actually shows that new price that you've just configured. Another example of this kind of customization is if we were selling computers, and you offer a base model, that would be your product, and then you have very specific changes, like you could upgrade the RAM, or you could add an extra monitor, or you could add an extra mouse, or 3 more hard drives, whatever you want. You could make that a customizable field and change the price directly. So that is customizable fields. And we have this example here, which is the more common one, where we're engraving something or asking the customer for more information. A slightly less common one is donation fields. So to quickly go over this again, it's facilitated by fields on line items. We can use views to show that, because it is simply a field. So if you're looking at the cart, if you're looking at checkout, you can just use views to show those off. And of course, if you're familiar with rules, you can use rules to change the pricing. You can use rules to do things on your site based on the values that your customers give you. And of course, there's a link here, and I assume we'll be posting these slides on Drupal Camp Atlanta, so you can go there and click to the actual module. Another great example of this is variable price products. So if you are building a donation site, and this seems to be what Commerce is really, really well suited for, because you can do anything in Commerce that you could do in Drupal. So this is a great field module that has nothing to do with Commerce. It's called Select or Other. Okay, and Webform, I think, was the first one to gravitate towards this idea back in Drupal 6, and then it got implemented in CCK, and it's available for Drupal 7. And all it does is it lets you define a list of things and it adds a little other at the bottom of it, which is exactly what, it turns out, organizations want for donations. You kind of want some fixed amounts, some options, and then you want to be able to offer people to say, well, you know, if I really want to do this, I'm going to give you $10,000. You don't want to say no to that. It's a donation. So that's how you can do that. You just simply add a select or other field to your line item, and you use rules to change the price from your select or other field to the actual price of the product.
What's the name of that module?
Select or other. Google that. Maybe with the word Drupal, you'll find it. And this is, I was looking at the robinhood.org website. I believe Phase 2? Phase 2 built that using Commerce. And this right here, select or other field. Very, very expensive site. It's got crazy attention, huge donation revenues coming through here, but it's using a select or other field on a line item type to make that happen. So props to Phase 2 for making that thing happen. Another example of products that you can do with Commerce is invoice payment with no cart. And for that, I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan because he's got all kinds of great ways of discussing this.
I don't know about that. This is the simplest one. So actually, the idea is that you may have a website that doesn't need to display products at all. In fact, you just use them for yourself to say maybe a product is an hour of my time, or the product is your monthly service fee, or something like that. Inside Drupal Commerce, you don't have to use the cart module in order to have a checkout form where the customer might come give you money, which is great for invoicing because you want to create their invoice, send them maybe a printout or something with a link to their checkout URL to give you money without them being able to go to the cart page and then sort of change, how much they owe you and all that stuff. So this is actually one of Josh's invoices from FreshBooks, and it's got addresses, client address, the line items that he's billing them for. And if we look at what that might look like inside of Drupal Commerce, you can use the, I believe it was Commerce Invoice? Or
Commerce Billing.
Commerce Billing, yeah. So Commerce Billing creates billing...
Billy with a Y.
Yeah, but they did that
because they thought it was cute?
Light.
Yes.
They thought it was cute. So, it can take an order and then sort of render it to look like that FreshBooks invoice. And then you can edit this to include a link to the checkout form order for the order. So the idea is you create the order on the back end as an administrator. You add the products to it that you want, that you have defined in your product listing. You look at the order ID, and then you send them to the checkout form for that order. And the checkout form is always just going to be at example.com/checkout / the order ID. So really simple way to link them directly to the payment form on your site. So not a whole lot more to say there, other than just to say that there are plenty of opportunities for doing commerce without using the shopping cart or even the checkout form if you don't need that. Another example of one that maybe doesn't use the cart would be some conference registration websites like DrupalCon or some of the Drupal camps through COD. Just have you fill out your registration form and go straight to checkout for that attendee. And you sort of repeat the process for each ticket you want, I suppose. But they aren't using the shopping cart, and they aren't using product displays. They just have a custom form that includes everything you need, including your Drupal Association membership, t-shirt sizes, food needs, and all that kind of stuff. Are there any questions about variable price products, invoice payment, those topics before I move on? Yeah?
I do have a question going back to the checkbox for when you want to add that line item to the product.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why that box isn't just checked anyway? Because I know I found myself to do that.
Yeah.
It's like when you add it, you want it to be there anyway. So.
Yeah, there are definitely scenarios where you don't want the data to be available, whether it's the attribute field checkbox or the line item field checkbox. One example is in Germany, there are pretty strict requirements around what you do with your e-commerce website regarding pricing, not to mention button text and placement and all that stuff. And so you might have a field that stores the price of the product when the customer added it to the cart, and then you retain that price for them for, say, 24 hours, regardless of the price changes. But you wouldn't really want that to be on the added cart form. It's more just something in the back end for you to use to implement that logic. maybe it's a referral code, maybe it's something that came from the URL. Like, so like we don't check it by default just because we don't know. Just because you're adding a field here doesn't mean that it needs to be on the add to cart form. Other examples would be like the shipping module uses a shipping service field. Yeah, who really knows what you might put on there? So, we try to make few assumptions. Sometimes that means you have to put a little more thought work into it as the site builder, which is a pain. But you know, I've forgotten to check it too, and I've forgotten to check the attribute one as well. So at least if you know how to fix it, you can go back. Any other questions about customizable products, variable price products? Yes.
Yeah. So when you're bypassing the shopping cart and you're invoicing your services,
Mm-hmm.
your quantity will be fractional.
Yeah, the question was, can you have fractional quantities if you're invoicing for services? And the answer is yes. Our quantity field for the line item is a decimal that supports a precision of 2 decimal places. By default, it's doing validation for integers, but you can enter in fractional quantities. It will multiply it properly and everything. Yeah?
I saw in your edit you had maybe a third-party module recurring payment.
Yes, and I will do that next after invoices, yeah. Any other questions about these topics before I move on to recurring? All right. So the topic of subscription products, recurring payments, memberships, all that stuff comes up quite a bit. And it's only recently that we've had a sort of full tool set of modules to implement whatever you need, basically. The first pass of this that was really successful was Commerce subscription products, and this is also the sort of lowest phi solution. What it does is it uses the rules module and the rules scheduler to let you sort of create a product type that can sort of create a new order every month or every year or whatever, and then just send an email notification to the customer to come and pay. So it's not actually handling recurring payment, but it is letting you define subscription products that would generate that sort of role assignment that expires after a certain date that has to be re-upped or something like that. Because you can actually get most of the way there using rules and rules scheduling. Rules scheduler is just a module that I think it's part of the rules package.
It's part of rules.
That basically lets you execute an action at some time in the future, so you can grant someone a role that gives them access to view the private part of the website or something, and then schedule a rule for 30 days later or a year later to remove that role from them, unless they come in and pay again or something like that. So this module facilitates that. But if we actually want to start, and this was, Fago was the creator of rules, and then Matthew Connaughton was doing the BOF after lunch. We'll be talking about this as well. But then we also, we wanted to start moving toward handling recurring payments on site. I've never been a fan of using payment gateway recurring payment APIs because they never really give you the data you need on your website to stay in touch with your customers. So the classic example is, I think like PayPal, Authorize.net, and just about everybody will not tell you when a payment fails. And so you have no way of updating your website to remove their role or deactivate their account because you never actually get notified from the payment gateway that it failed. But if you were managing it through your own website, well, then you would know immediately if a payment failed. There are third-party recurring billing services that I would recommend that do a lot more. One is Recurly. It's recurly.com. There's some others. That's the only one that I personally use. Moonclerk is another one, but I'm not sure they have an API yet. But if you wanted to build this sort of functionality on your site, the first thing you have to do is get how am I going to handle payments securely? Because you cannot retain credit card information in your database. It's just not safe, it's not secure. Drupal will never be itself level 1 PCI compliant and ready for you to do this because it's really notoriously hard to certify open source software because the PCI, the payment card industry, expects this to be really hardened and monitored and yada yada. So what you can do instead is store your credit card details at the payment gateway and then just retain on your website a token that you can use to process a transaction against that credit card at some random date in the future. Sometimes this involves an upsell. So like with CyberSource or Authorize.net, you have to have their customer information manager or customer subscriptions API access. Sometimes you can get it for free. So in PayPal, you can actually generate a reference transaction from a previous transaction for up to a year after the initial transaction. So if you're doing monthly billing, then you just have that initial transaction, and then you store the transaction ID, and then a month later you charge it again, and then you get the new transaction ID, and then so on and so forth. And you can just keep going, and then you'll know immediately, whenever you process that transaction, if it failed, passed, is pending, or whatever. The Commerce Card on File module is what provides the user interface on your website to store and manage those tokens, regardless of whatever payment gateway you're using. So that the payment method module has to be integrated to the card on file, but then you have the customer-oriented user interfaces where they can add, update their credit card or billing information, or use a previously entered card on the checkout form. And you have the administrator user interface where you can manage that data as well. So the next step is, once you have this token, how do I actually choose when to charge that customer again? And so that's where the Commerce Recurring framework comes in. Commerce Recurring will let you enrich your product type with the information that you need to specify to have the recurring period, how much the recurring charge is versus the initial charge, whether or not there's a trial period, 14 days free, and $39.99 a month after that. Sort of gives you all these different options, and then it's working through rules and cron, the cron jobs, to process the payment through an integration with Commerce Card on File. So you have the secure storage of your payment data at the payment gateway. You use the Commerce Card on File module to then store and manage that token. It's going to let you charge the customer again in the future. And then Commerce Recurring lets you enrich your products on a product type basis with that recurring data to then kind of, bring it all together. A new module set that also,
Yeah.
And then additionally, stay in commerce spending, that's good.
Oh, okay.
Additionally, you'll want to be able to handle failed payments, expired credit cards, daily limit bounces, that kind of stuff. All of that is collectively referred to as dunning management in the recurring payment industry. And it's also, really difficult to implement on your own if you were just trying to rig it all up through rules or something, or have a manual process. So what we've developed is a commerce dunning module that actually implements this whole crazy workflow that says, was my charge successful? Okay, great, we'll just move on to the next charge in a month or a year. But if it failed, then you have all these different options, to rig out, was it a hard decline or a soft decline? So a hard decline would be like the credit card's expired, so you're not going to be able to try again tomorrow with the same credit card details. A soft decline would be, well, I hit a daily limit, and so I'll try again tomorrow and send an email to the customer and whatnot, asking them, just notifying them or asking them to update their credit card information. And so this handles all of the rules to manage that logic for you. So commerce dunning, and then the next slide was the commerce license and commerce license billing module. So dunning, license, and license billing are the modules that Commerce Guys is using to manage recurring billing for our hosting platform. And our needs were beyond just a simple subscription product, because we wanted to have your base monthly fee that actually had metered usage, incidental charges, prorated charges when you bounce from one plan to the next halfway through the month, and all that stuff. And so this suite of modules is going to sort of bring a more robust recurring billing interface to your store that can handle pretty much any of the above that I've just mentioned. I'm not the expert on commerce license and license billing. That was developed by my friend Boyan from our company, who's been on our Commerce Kickstart 2 team and now is working on the marketplace and platform team. But he has presented on this at previous events. I think, did he mention it at Prague?
No, he didn't.
He didn't highlight it in Prague, but he will be talking about it at Bad Camp next week, and I know he's done some presentations in Europe. So we'll maybe try to get the videos of that into the Drupal Commerce video library on drupalcommerce.org. Yeah, question?
I've got subscription clients that ask me to do, one-off services for them. Can these tools be used to stash the card with the provider, and while it continues to do the monthly subscription renewals, also allow it to generate an invoice for the services for this month?
Yeah, so the question was, can I have something managing my subscription payment, but then still create incidental invoices and charge the customer using that credit card data? And the answer is yes, because Commerce Card on File is abstracting, the storage of that token for you to use it in any of these places, whether it's the customer on the checkout form or the recurring module on cron, or yourself manually triggering that payment somehow. I don't actually know off the top of my head how we've integrated it into the backend. I don't think, for example, you can go to the payment tab of an order and just find the previous, the stored card data for that customer. But that would be a really brilliant feature request. So if you wanted to throw it in there, that'd be great. At the very least, we're actually about to put some rules integration into the core of Drupal Commerce that Commerce Card on File would hook into to allow you to do that through rules, actions, and the like. Yeah, right.
Is there any kind of an item for a help payment? For instance, I have a client who wants to allow people to start signing up for his website on like the coming soon page. But then once the page launches, he wants to run the payment. He doesn't want to charge them to launch.
And he's getting payment information, huh?
Well, he wants the clients to be able to sign up through like a card, basically. Like, okay, when we launch, I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to run your card until launch, which may be in 60 days, 90 days,
Okay.
something like that.
The question was more or less deferred, the deferred payment. So you collect the credit card details at one point in time, then at some arbitrary date in the future, you actually want to charge it. And so it's really going to vary on a payment gateway by payment gateway basis. A simple authorization may give you a 30-day window in which you can capture that authorization. But if you're talking about 60 days, 90 days, I don't know anybody that does that. So instead, you'd have to find someone that had a service like the Customer Information Manager, Vault.net, or any of a variety of others. Braintree has their Vault. PayPal does have their system for doing it too. And whenever you add a credit card to a customer account there, it does do credit card validation to make sure it's a legit credit card. You could do an authorization for $0 on some gateways to ensure it's a valid card and that kind of thing. But it does vary on a gateway by gateway basis. So the card on file mod would still facilitate you retaining that information ahead of time and then charging at some point in the future. But it's up to you to kind of do the homework with your gateway to find out exactly what terms you're going to have. Right here?
Is there an instance where I would want to use the Curly module over card on file?
Yeah, the question was, is there an instance where you want to use Recurly over rolling your own? And I would say it really depends on how integrated what you're doing from a subscription standpoint is with the rest of your commerce. Honestly, like webform.com that Nate Howard runs, the backshop guy, he just uses Recurly.js and doesn't integrate it into commerce at all. He manages all of his e-commerce through the Recurly interface, and that's fine for him. So if you have a simple site like that, sure, I would go for that. I would use a commerce-specific integration if I knew I was going to sell other types of products along with that, and I wanted to have all my data in one place, or do something additional with the data beyond what I could get out of an integration. One more question, then I'm going to move on to roadmap from the back.
Do you have a plan for recurring orders instead of just recurring products?
Oh, well, so that's actually how it works. It does create an order on a monthly basis that has the products from your previous order. So the Commerce Recurring Framework does treat it at an order level, not at a product level. But then there's also another module that's like Commerce Reorder or something that provides a user interface for a customer to trigger a repurchase of a previous order. Maybe you could rig something up like that via rules to do it yourself. I don't know. So I do need to move on to roadmap so we can let the folks go that are hungry for lunch, and then I'll be hanging out talking more for the questions I didn't get to. But to sort of wrap up our time, we just wanted to say that Drupal Commerce is not set in stone. What I've described to you as, and what Josh has described to you, is the sort of the current implementation of our architecture. It's not the best way for it to be done, but we do want you to know how to use the tool now. But we are re-architecting around Drupal 8 in the future, and we'll bring some improvements to the product data model, the product display data model, and other various bits and pieces of product pricing and line item management and all that. So we have a roadmap posted. I'll show a link in a sec. But basically, the main emphases of our development on Drupal 8 are listed here. We want to make sure that we're making the best use of the core systems and components in Drupal 8. A great example Josh already mentioned is that the entity reference field module that we developed in Contrib on Drupal 7 is now a part of Drupal 8 itself, which means I can remove from Drupal Commerce the product reference module, the line item reference module, and the customer profile reference module, and make it a lot lighter weight. That's going to get rid of like 4,000 lines of code just by having that one new field in Drupal core. We'll also have views in core. We'll have a more robust entity API in core, and so be able to rethink and re-implement our features on this new architecture. We also want to make sure that we're continuing to use explicit configuration instead of implicit behavior. And what I mean by that is, if you used Drupal Commerce in its earlier days, you never would have even had a checkbox to tell Drupal Commerce to treat a product field as an attribute field. You just had to magically meet some certain qualifications that we had documented but weren't in the user interface anywhere, in order to have like your size field show up on the end of cart form. And of course, we quickly realized that was stupid. Why don't we just put a little checkbox there? And now it's explicit, and we have a point where we can add additional configuration options. And so we'll continue to sort of sniff those out around Drupal Commerce and make sure that it's very clear what's happening in your configuration. Now, we want to build and use robust internal APIs. Right now, the place where you would probably have most interaction or most frustration if you're doing development with Drupal Commerce is with the pricing system, because there's a lot of work that you still have to do yourself. We didn't really create a great like pricing API and then consume that internally that you could then use in your contributor modules. And so we want to kind of reverse course and fix some of those places. We also want to serve the majority use case. In some cases, we've over-engineered, for example, the shopping cart refresh. That idea that whenever the shopping cart loads, we want to recalculate the price of every product in the cart because it may have changed between now and the last time you viewed a page. Well, realistically, that's not going to happen for most sites on a page view by page view basis, or even on a day by day or week by week basis. We just changed the prices on my personal e-commerce site after a year and a half of doing business. So for us, there's this sort of like performance overhead that we put in there to be like super aggressive about this feature that every site doesn't need. And so we want to find those places where we're doing something as a core assumption in the user interface, in the code, that serves that niche use case that we thought was so important and then didn't end up getting used at all. So those sorts of things we have in mind. If you have any frustrations around any of these from a user interface or development perspective, it would be great to get your feedback on our roadmap post at drupalcommerce.org/roadmap. Finally, we do want to continue to improve Drupal Commerce as a data conduit versus a data container. So this is just a realization that your e-commerce website is more or less a point of sale system, not the thing that drives your business. There are in some smaller stores, new e-commerce players that maybe do just use their e-commerce system as everything. But in most cases, especially if you're simply building an e-commerce site for an established business or upgrading someone from one e-commerce system to the next, your website is really a data conduit that needs to speak to external systems in the front end or the back end. So on the front end, maybe you are sending one representation of the website to the web browser and another to your mobile app. And so you want to send HTML in one place, JSON in another, and then maybe have some sort of an API for interacting with that data in the different formats. We want to improve the capabilities of commerce in that direction. And I'll actually be talking about this afternoon in my toured Hyper Drupal session how Drupal 8 is going to mature as a system for defining REST APIs that would facilitate that communication. So if you're interested in REST APIs or Hypermedia, come see that talk. I think it's 2. But then we also want to be a lot better about getting your e-commerce data, whether it's products, orders, conversions, customer data, out the back end to your CRM system, to your analytics system, to your fulfillment system, and the like. So really, from a core commerce perspective, it's a matter of making sure that we have a clean data model, that we aren't tightly coupling things in a way that we don't need to, and that we're sort of enriching the core REST functionality of Drupal 8 with our own hypermedia to facilitate building and consuming REST APIs with your Drupal Commerce site. So that's kind of where we're headed from a development perspective. There's a lot more information at drupalcommerce.org/roadmap, where you can see a lot of the things that we've targeted for improvement, from products to pricing to taxes, to everything. So we'd love to get your feedback there if you're interested, or while I'm here. And I guess I'll take one last question and we will depart.
Just wondering about marketplace implementation.
About what?
Marketplace implementation.
Marketplace implement, yeah. Let's talk about it afterwards, then I'll let folks go, because it's not a quick answer for that. So thanks for being here. Enjoy lunch and the rest of your camp.